Hello, everyone. I just want to begin by saying I really enjoyed taking this class with all of you. I hope it has been as beneficial to you as it has been to me. I know I myself have learned a lot about language as no only a tool, but almost a valuable asset that we can begin to explore and use in our everyday lives through different meanings. And so today I'm going to dive into a bit more about that. And I actually want to begin with a quote from Nelson Mandela that reads, "If you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to a heart." And this quote I found to be extremely powerful, and it almost directly relates to what we were learning in class, especially with the transactional model. And I'm actually going to dive a bit more into that later on. But I just wanted to preface um, what I learned with class through this quote. So that's why I started with this. And then I'm actually going to move on now to code of ethics, because this was obviously one of the first things we began the class with, and we had our one paper on. And I actually really valued this paper. I really took some time to see who I am as a person. And in that, I kind of established that my code of ethics are boiled down to four main parts. That is respect, integrity, trust, and social responsibility. So, what do I mean by respect and integrity? Well, for one thing, that means really being empathetic and understanding. It's one thing just to say something, it's another to really take the time to actually respect what that person is saying and really see them and value their dignity and like appreciating each other's differences. That to me is at the bottom line of respect. And I feel like in today's culture, it's oftentimes lost. And so, in trying to be non discriminatory and really hone in on like valuing someone's differences, you can learn to build a strong sense of respect. And in that, that also plays into this idea of trust, really valuing and seeing someone for who they are. Lastly, I like to think of myself as a socially responsible person by doing my part in understanding and comprehending the world around me. Obviously, we are all different, so taking the time to understand each other and use language as this sort of tool to get there, I think there's a beauty in that in some way, and that goes back to this quote of what Nelson Mandela said, and is that you speaking to someone in a way that they'd understand and communicating that with them in a way that understands, you're able to just really speak to their heart and not only develop trust, but be a more social, responsible person. So there was now let's move on to a time where I had to challenge my ethical code. It actually happened recently. I was playing pickleball the other week, and I had an older gentleman heckling me and calling out names and stuff as I was playing it. I was honestly astonished and taken aback. I was like, someone of this age, I didn't think he would be just acting in the manner that he did. And the time I just refrained from saying anything. I kept a strong and positive demeanor, and I just kept smiling. And although I didn't say anything back, I felt like my silence was a strong communication tool because it showed myself with a sense of dignity where I didn't need to put this man down for his actions. And so, in doing so, I felt like I showed him a sign of respect in some way by being this bigger man per se. And I'm interested to hear what you would do in a situation where, let's say, someone is heckling or like belittling you in some way. How would you respond? Would you act as an aggressor, or would you try to like handle the situation in a meaningful way to not provoke it any further. I'm interested. I'm curious. I now want to examine communication as a transaction model through the movie Good Will Hunting. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. And one of my favorite scenes that I feel like best exemplifies this is when Will first sits down um, with Professor McGuire, played by Robin Williams, and he's very passive aggressive about opening up. But when Robin or when Professor McGuire begins to open up about his vulnerabilities, you see a different side to Will, a more vulnerable side. And that's like one of the things that I really learned in this class is this transactional model of communication. I feel like there's a large sense of vulnerability in it. It's really opening up and connecting beyond just the basic level. And so to me, that's something that's really important. And another question that I wanted to pose for the class is there an instance, or are there instances rather, where you feel like the transactional model, where this sense of vulnerability really comes into play, where people tend to open up more often? Otherwise, this concludes my presentation, and I thank you for taking the time to listen.